Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're taking a look at 10 games that look, run, and play way better on Switch 2 than they ever did on the original Switch. Before we begin, we publish new videos all week long, so be sure to subscribe to MojoPlays and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Resident Evil 5.
So you'll be accompanying me to the destination?
Yes. Tensions are running high ever since the change in government.
I'll bet. Intel says it's a haven for terrorists now.
It's kind of odd that the original Switch could not handle a game as ancient as Resident Evil 5. Seriously, this is a game from 2009 that ran on the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, consoles with the same amount of power as the Switch does, if not a little bit less power. Players cited frequent dips in frame rate on Switch, which often floated around 20 frames per second. Thankfully, the Switch 2 manages to run the game at the same speed it performs on modern hardware, although some players report much faster frame rates. Overall though, you can expect a buttery smooth 60 frames per second even when being played in handheld mode. Metroid Dread. For the most part, Metroid Dread ran just fine on the first Switch console. Most of the game managed to run at 60 frames per second, but in areas that caused some more intense visual effects, the game would noticeably drop to 30 frames per second, sometimes a little bit lower. A minor inconvenience for cutscenes and impactful moments. With the power of Switch 2, that is no longer a problem, as many Switch 2 owners have reported that Metroid Dread runs at a constant 60 frames per second. No more slowdown, no more chugging, it is now Metroid running as it should be. Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. Now this one was surprising considering this was a launch game for the original Switch and did not receive much support after launch. Ubisoft didn't even put out a patch for this, and yet Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle performs substantially better on Switch 2 than it ever did before. Every cutscene, every battle, every transition runs at a stable 60 frames per second. This makes the game so much better because the original release, while fun, ran so poorly between constant freezing between scenes and a frame rate that would grow more inconsistent as more enemies loaded onto the battlefield. Now, it's about as smooth as XCOM 2. Dragon Quest Builders 2. Dragon Quest Builders 2 was rather taxing on the Switch 1, and understandably so. This is, after all, a game that has a pretty big chunk of world rendered in at once, and must function enough to allow the player to build portions of the world at any given moment. So, of course it was going to chug. Well, that is no longer the case on Switch 2. You can now wander the lands and build your towns at a higher resolution with superior performance that matches modern hardware. Now, if only Square Enix can find a way to get Dragon Quest XI running this fine on Switch 2. Cex Quest HD. This was one of the most baffling screw-ups the Switch ever saw. Cex Quest HD is a remake of the 1997 FPS released on PC in 2020 and on Switch in 2022. Despite being a game with limited animations, a collection of 5 reasonably small maps, and being built on Unreal Engine 4, Cex Quest HD ran horribly on the Switch. Really, the performance makes it unbearable to play, and yet, for whatever reason, it runs perfectly fine on Switch 2, performing as it intended on PC. Here's hoping more folks give this game another shot. It's $5, supports local multiplayer, and is great to have loaded up if you've got an hour to kill. Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition, and Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes. It is really not all that surprising that Hyrule Warriors and Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hope didn't run super great on the original Switch. These are games that load in a ton of enemies on screen at one time, and have a lot of different scripts going on in other corners of the various maps. In other words, these are demanding games that the Switch just wasn't able to keep up with all that well. But when playing them on Switch 2, these two Warriors spin-offs are much more playable with smoother frame rates and much faster load times than ever before. Also, you don't have to worry about crashes as much with Hyrule Warriors. Unfortunately, the same cannot be said for Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity, nor the original Fire Emblem Warriors. Both still run at 30 frames per second, though it's a lot smoother than the original Switch allowed. Bayonetta 3. Speaking of action-heavy games, Bayonetta 3 suffered from technical limitations severely when it initially launched. We're talking extensive load times, low resolution on random textures, poor draw distance, and predictably inconsistent frame dips. It all made the game pretty insufferable to sit through.
Size isn't everything, you know.
Well, Bayonetta 3 has begun its redemption arc, as Switch 2 owners have found it performs as well there as the first two games did on Xbox 360 and Wii U. The only struggle you should have now is the camera, which that's pretty much irreparable. Monster Hunter Stories 2: Wings of Ruin. If you were one of the few people who refused to play Wings of Ruin until it came to PS4, trust us, you were absolutely right to wait for it to come to other platforms, assuming you just didn't nab it on PC instead. Wings of Ruin did not run super well on Switch. Despite the technical shortcomings, it still managed to sell quite a number of copies on Nintendo's hybrid console. Well, those who already bought and played the game have a reason to revisit it on Switch 2, as the game runs at the same level of quality as it does on other platforms. The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom. When Tears of the Kingdom initially launched, it became one of Nintendo's greatest hits on the Switch thanks to its unique mechanics and level design. However, one thing that everybody could agree on, the game ran like a shredder chewing through a sewer lid. This was a major turnoff for many people, and even caused some players to leave the game unfinished. However, when buying and installing the Switch 2 Enhanced Edition, Tears of the Kingdom functions as it always should have, with high resolutions, better frame rates, and even HDR support. So if you weren't on board back when it first dropped, maybe now's the time to jump in. And lastly, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Of all the Switch games that put some stink on the Switch's reputation, as well as its own IP, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet was the most notorious. This game ran like complete garbage on Switch, to the point where most considered it to be completely unplayable. Well, no longer on Switch 2. For the first time in a long time, we have a fully functioning Pokemon game that runs at 60 frames per second, boasts a great draw distance, handles more characters on screen at once, and plays beautifully. Hopefully now more folks will give Pokemon Scarlet and Violet a second chance, because so far, we've been playing it for ourselves, and it is so much better than it ever was. No joke, I wound up playing it for 3 hours and totally forgot that I had to throw this video together. But tell us, what games have you been playing on Switch 2 that turned you off initially? Let us know down in the comments, and be sure to subscribe to MojoPlays for more great videos every day. As for me, I gotta get back to exploring the Great Crater itself. Team Star has been really obnoxious, and it's time for me to put them in their place.
Less hot air, more gas.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, there's more where that came from.